back, I'm moving on.
You hear that voice, you know instantly you're listening to the man in black, Johnny Cash. Well, guess what? You think you've heard everything there is to hear about Johnny Cash? You think you've heard every Johnny Cash song that there is? You really haven't, because they have recently found a cache of old Johnny Cash songs in the vault, and they were discovered by his son, John Carter Cash, who joins us now on the line to talk about the release of this old but new material.
Good morning.
John, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you, sir?
We're doing very well. Okay, so first of all, tell me how you found this old stuff.
Well, my parents they kept everything, it seems, all through the years that they were together. And I mean, they had a storage facility, and they put hundreds of recordings away through the years that they made, maybe duplicate tapes or whatever. And by the end of their life, there was this amazing amassment of music that was there. When they passed away, it became necessary to go through these things, and the storage facility was cleaned out, and we actually shipped all the tapes up to New York City. They transferred it all to digital, and then sent the original tapes back. But 2 years ago, we found these recordings, Out Among the Stars, which would become Out Among the Stars. It was produced by Billy Sherrill back in the early '80s, and but it was actually shelved back then. It was actually put away.
Yeah, Columbia Records didn't know quite what to do with Johnny Cash at that time. He was going
at the time they didn't. They didn't have the vision. So it got put away and locked away, and then but now we have the opportunity to share it with the world. So what a blessing.
Well, yeah, and I got to tell you, I mean, this was written up on Billboard at Billboard.com, and a lot of the MP3s are embedded there. And boy, I mean, this is such a popular page. I saw it on Facebook. I saw people tweeting around about it. I mean, clearly, CBS may not have known what to do back then, but now the people are coming to this music, aren't they?
Oh yeah, definitely so. I mean, my dad, and he touched the world with his music, his spirit, and everything he did throughout his life, and it endures, So something like this is really exciting, for me personally, because it connects me back to the man that I knew back then when I was a kid,
Now let's talk a little bit about this. Some of these recordings were not in final shape. In other words, you needed to do some work on them. Tell me how you did that.
Well, Billy Sherrill, who produced the original recordings, is retired now. Completely retired from the music business, but there were missing guitar solos, here and there, missing pieces, that were out of the original recordings. So it needed to be finished. But for instance, Marty Stewart played on the original recordings.
Marty Stewart being Johnny Cash's son-in-law at one point, and somebody played in his band and an artist in his own right.
Yeah, definitely so. But I called Marty and I said, Marty, your guitar playing is better now than it was back in the 70s, back in the 80s. Why don't you come in and replace your guitar? So Marty came into my studio, the Cash Cabinet studio there in Hendersonville, and he replaced his guitars and mandolin. So it was a really neat way to come full circle.
Our guest is John Carter Cash, and you can well imagine, based on his name, that he is the son of Johnny Cash and, of course, June Carter Cash. And I got to ask you, the film Walk the Line really sort of brought your parents into in front of an audience that didn't know a whole lot about what happened behind the scenes there. And I know you wrote your own book recounting your parents' struggles with addiction and such. What did you think of the movie, and what do you think about this sort of resurgence and interest in your parents?
Well, the movie does one thing beautifully. It tells a great love story, and in 2 hours, that's you got to have a focus point, and that was it. And
I would think, as their son, it would be nice to see that part of it emphasized.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, I'm grateful for that, because if it hadn't been for that love story, I wouldn't be here. So, I mean, it truly tells a beautiful love story. And ups and downs or whatever, I mean, the struggles that my parents had and that my dad had, with addiction and all through those years, I mean, the good and the bad, if I weigh it all out and I look at the beauty that endures and, the purpose and the memory that is there and, the good spirit and whatnot, that's what wins, the truth, the light, and that's what remains with me in my heart.
So what was the biggest surprise out of all of these cuts that you found? What was the thing you went, wow, I am so glad I found this little nugget?
I don't know. The one you started off the show with was one. Dad and Waylon doing I'm Moving On, which was just perfect, powerful. I mean, it begs me to wonder why this was lost all these years. It's so beautiful. I played it for Shooter Jennings, and he was excited, man. I mean, it's just overwhelming to know that the legacy that endures.
I mean,
and,
people may not know Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings were actually roommates for a while in Nashville.
Yeah, they were.
I bet they tore that town up.
in Madison, Tennessee, just down the road from my mother. Back in the '60s. Yeah.
And well, listen, it's tremendous to hear that stuff. What do you think ultimately, though, is the legacy of your dad? Well, what will people most remember him for?
Well, my dad, they asked Larry King asked my dad what he would most be remembered by. What would it be? What would he like people to think of him as? His reaction immediately was that he wanted to be remembered as a good father. So in that he endures. He laughs. But my dad means so much to so many people around the world. I get phone calls sometimes or messages. I got one the other day from a fellow that said he was 19, and he said, if it wasn't for your dad, I'd be dead right now. He said
Wow.
His music saved my life.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it hit a whole new generation with those Rick Rubin recordings where they went in and did some really unusual stuff, and the voice, even in his last years, was still very, very strong. I must say to you that one of the great honors of my life was when I was 19 years old, I got to meet your dad just briefly backstage in Odessa, Texas at a concert, and he couldn't have been more gracious.
Cool. Yeah, no, he's always, gracious to his fans and the folks that he met. He's always wide open and loving and caring person.
Well, they're calling it Johnny Cash's Lost album. It's called Out Among the Stars, and it's available now on iTunes. And actually, it's funny, your dad didn't live to see this whole digital revolution with music, but I'm guessing because of the accessibility of his music in such an easy way on iTunes that he's still selling just fine, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, he saw the beginning of it. He really did in 2003. But yeah, no, his music, it's in the hearts of the people. And he still gets new fans every day, all around the world. 6-year-olds are still loving Johnny Cash.
Yeah. Well, listen, Brian got to say his personal thing. I never got to meet your father, but may I just say, on behalf of all men who can't hit any notes above a middle C, we appreciate your father's music just so we have something to sing at karaoke.
I'm with you.
All right. John Carter Cash, we really appreciate you joining us here and talking about this new album that's out called Out Among the Stars, Johnny Cash's recordings from the 1980s that have been refurbished and re-released.
All right, great.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. Cash.
Thank you.
Let's listen a little bit.
Then you'd stop by on
John and
your way
June.
sometimes later.
And if we are wrestled, I'd see that you